Okay, so to understand the speech that I'm about to give you, I suggest you pause this video and go listen to Stitches by Shawn Mendes, Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift, and Hello by Adele. So you may wonder why I'm having you listen to these pop songs as part of this speech. The truth is, to me, they're more than just pop songs. They are memories of times that I spent in the psychiatric ward as a 21-year-old. You may wonder how you could possibly relate to that, or how you could possibly understand the experience of a mentally ill person like me. The truth is, it's quite easy. Remember those songs? Imagine those songs, well, the lyrics of those songs are the voice of God speaking to you. We aren't taught very often to hear the voice of God in this way. When people talk about God, they usually talk about things like Bibles and Jesus. Seldom do they talk about simple human love and longing, and yes, pain. That is probably one of the more profound aspects of being mentally ill. I remember being in the mealroom with my friend Connie, both of us listening to a Madonna song. I don't remember all the lyrics just now, but I remember that there was something in there about a key. But, we were just sitting there kind of, like this, just listening to the music, and it was a really profound moment for both of us. And it means a lot that we could have this moment because she was Catholic and I'm Unitarian Universalist. And yet we were still able to share this moment together. I should mention that since I was psychotic, my memory of the following event may not be accurate. What I'm about to tell you is how I remember it, not necessarily what the nurses would tell you if they were here today. One of the more painful moments that I experienced on the psychiatric ward was due to a side effect of one of my medications called akathisia. And at the time I didn't know that it was called akathisia. I just felt like I wanted to jump out of my skin and I felt really squirmy and it was an awful, awful, awful feeling. It was so awful that I actually asked the nurses to put me in restraints. And they couldn't because I wasn't hurting myself and I wasn't hurting anyone else. But I just kept asking and asking and asking. And I even went to the quiet room and I asked them to lock me in the quiet room, hoping that it might give me some relief from this awful feeling that I was feeling. They did eventually lock me in the quiet room, but there was a cycle that we were going through for a while where I would go to the quiet room and try to sit still and calm down, and then I would just go to the nurses and beg for restraints again. And they would say, "Oh, we'll have them ready in 5 minutes, Alexandra." But they never had them ready in 5 minutes. And I would just go back to the quiet room and try to calm down, and the cycle would repeat itself over and over and over and over. And I finally banged my head against the wall a few times because I was so frustrated. Of course, I did this lightly, but I think it probably gave the nurses the excuse that they needed to put me in restraints, because they finally put me in restraints and they kept me there for a while, and I did eventually feel better. But yes, I was in the hospital for psychosis. I wasn't always acting very rationally or expressing myself in ways that people could understand. But when I was restrained, and this had a religious element to it because I was going through religious psychosis, but I came to understand that humanity has run out of time. And what I mean by this is that we really can't say, 5 more years until we act on the climate. Like how those nurses were when they said, 5 more minutes until we get you your restraints. I mean, I think that I really had to understand what it was like to be out of time before I could understand what it's like for the planet to be out of time, really. So funnily enough, some years, in fact, after I'd had this entire experience, my stepdad and my mom and I were sitting around the table after dinner, and my stepdad was reading aloud to us from The Atlantic. And he had found an article on climate change that basically confirmed everything that I kind of already believed about climate change. And I'll give you some of the information right now so you don't have to read the article. So the role that carbon dioxide plays in regulating our climate has been well known since the Civil War. And today there is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than at any point in over 3 million years. And we're doing very, very, very little to stop this. We are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in one of the fastest rates ever. And if we keep doing this, evolution is not going to keep pace. Um, Human history has always been affected by the climate, and civilizations have been brought down by the whims of the climate. And, climate stability, according to this article, at least what this article was saying, is that it's important for a stable climate for human civilization to flourish, which is exactly what we're jeopardizing by continuing to put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And yes, we may have had a much warmer world in the past, but humanity and other living things evolved to live in a low carbon world. Um, Evolution doesn't happen in the blink of an eye either. It happens over the course of many, many, many years. Um, Plate tectonics has been in our favor because, weathering rocks is a very effective carbon sink. And roughly 10% of the planet's carbon sink is weathering rocks. And so basically we are messing with the climate and we are undoing everything that's been happening in a few decades. And so the future of our planet, sorry to tell you, might be way more extreme than any of the current models predict. And ocean acidification may reach the same level as it did 56 million years ago by later this century. And half of our tropical coral reefs have died, 10 trillion tons of ice have melted, the sea has grown 30% more acidic, and global temperatures have spiked. All of this in a few decades. One UU minister I know of, the Reverend Summer Albayati, has recently been appearing on podcasts with her son Devin and her mother. And this podcast is called The Bayat Beat. It is a great podcast if anybody wants to listen to it. In one episode, they were actually interviewing one of the leaders of the Citizens Climate Lobby. And the interviewee said that small actions really aren't enough anymore. They're going to help a little bit, but they alone are not going to stop climate change. And he said that we need action on a much larger scale if we have a hope of getting anything done and saving our planet. In other words, we need to stop worrying about driving less and start picketing ExxonMobil and other major polluters. This is where we come in. We can be a relevant faith for the 21st century. Indeed, we can be the faith that brings us into the 21st century. If we picket major polluters and engage in acts of civil disobedience, people will hear about us and people will want to join us. That is the best advertising. This is the best way to get to people who want to join our faith. Because if we do those things, people will admire us. And sure, not everyone will want to join us, but the right people will. And we might even save the planet in the process. So, thank you for your time.